This video is brought to you by Brilliant. All the way back in 2016, it was argued that one of the most significant advantages of Brexit would be a UK-US trade deal. 8 years on from the referendum, and the UK is still without a trade deal with its largest export market. However, with a second Trump presidency mere weeks away, hopes have been raised on this side of the pond that the 47th president might actually finalise the deal. So in this video, we're going to have a look at why a UK-US trade deal has been unsuccessful so far, and whether Starmer might be able to actually finally reach an agreement once Trump is back in office. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Now, the UK actually started negotiating a UK-US trade deal when Trump was president for the first time back in 2020, once the UK had formally left the EU and was able to begin negotiating its own free trade agreement, or FTA. Now, while there was some cause for optimism here, it quickly became clear that there were some major sticking points. The largest of these were food standards and the NHS. As the UK was a member of the EU for more than 40 years, the UK was aligned when it came to food standards. However, part of what the US was reportedly asking for in the early days of trade negotiations was for the UK to weaken these slightly in order to provide agribusinesses access to UK markets, something that would essentially allow products such as hormone-treated beef and chlorine-washed chicken to be imported into the UK. This was derided in the UK press, and campaigners worked hard to try and pressure the government into ensuring that there would be no such degradation of food standards. In the end, the UK government seemed to back down, promising that this would not be part of any UK-US trade deal. The other main sticking point was surrounding the NHS. It seems that the agribusinesses were not the only ones that wanted to get in on the action, as it was reported that the US pharmaceutical industry wanted the UK to change its system for the way that the NHS buys drugs. This is something that then Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn used in the 2019 election campaign to claim that the Conservatives were putting the NHS up for sale to the Americans. In the end, though, neither of these issues were the thing that killed discussions between the UK and the US of a potential for a trade deal. When Trump was voted out of office in 2020, the US's priorities changed. Dialogue between the UK and the US slowed, and it was later reported in January 2024 by UK Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch that the Biden administration is not doing FTAs. As such, all of the progress that had already been made on a UK-US trade deal was shelved, and there appeared to be little reason to suspect that it would see the light of day. Hopes were raised, though, upon the election of Donald Trump in early November. During his first term as president, he oversaw negotiations with the UK, and in 2020 promised a massive trade deal to support Brexit. Why then wouldn't he want to resurrect such a trade deal again? This would be a great way to support the special relationship, and might be mutually beneficial for both countries' economies. After all, the UK was the largest partner in services trade in 2021 to the US, and was the 7th largest goods export market for the US in 2022. High tariffs in certain areas, though, increased the costs of bilateral trade. A good example of this is the current US barrier on the import of baby formula, which imposed an effective tax of 25% on UK baby formula. According to the UK government's own analysis, the expected result of cutting these barriers, by on average 25%, could be as much as a 4.3% increase in UK exports to the US and a 4.1% increase in US exports to the UK. The thing is, not only does it seem to have reciprocal economic benefits, pursuing such a trade deal might also have some geopolitical advantages for Trump. The main thing here is that it might drive a bit of a wedge between the UK and the EU, as the UK would effectively be choosing to diverge from the EU on regulatory standards in order to cozy up to the US. It's no secret that Trump isn't exactly a big fan of the EU project. When Trump first ran for the presidency, he described Brussels as being like a hellhole. And only a few months ago, Nigel Farage claimed that Trump hates the EU so much that he makes Farage himself look like a Europhile. As Lionel Barber, a former editor of the FT, has argued, pulling the UK away from EU alignment could very well be Trump's motive here. However, it's also worth going through some reasons why there may be some misplaced optimism in regards to a potential UK-US deal under Trump. The most obvious and potentially most significant thing to consider is that Trump has been clear that he wants to be an America First president, one that jacks up tariffs across the board and around the world in order to encourage Americans to buy American. In the run-up to this year's election, Trump suggested that he would raise tariffs on Chinese goods to 60% and introduce a new universal tax on at least 10% of imports from other countries. While there are some suggestions that he won't do that to the UK, many of these seem to be based on the idea that he just supports the special relationship. This alone, though, may not protect the UK from Trump's tariff raising. This only seems more true when you consider the individual relationships between Trump and his inner circle and the UK government. Elon Musk has spent the better part of the summer criticising Starmer for his role over the UK riots, and a number of senior UK cabinet ministers have recently had to start backtracking on tweets criticising Donald Trump's first presidency. While usually these things might not impact the decisions made by a government, Trump is far more impulsive as president than any of his predecessors. There is, though, one other major reason to suggest that a trade deal may not be agreed to. Starmer may just not accept Trump's terms. After all, there's little reason to think that Trump is going to want a substantively different deal to the one he was negotiating in his first term. This would require Starmer to agree to allow chlorinated chicken onto the UK food market and US pharmaceutical companies in the NHS. Given how politically toxic this would be, it's unlikely that Starmer would back down on this anyway. Now, as a TLDR viewer, it's clear that you have a thirst for learning. After all, why else would you have watched a 10-minute video explaining the potential for a UK-US trade deal? Now, if you want to continue your learning journey, you really should check out Brilliant. Brilliant is the online learning platform where you learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in maths, data analysis, programming, and AI. These hands-on lessons have you comparing circuits to understand voltage and current, playing snooker to learn the rules of collision, planning your itinerary for an intergalactic music festival on a space-time diagram, and more. That way you'll build your natural intuition while gaining deep knowledge of scientific principles. In fact, Brilliant actually recently launched tons of new data science content, all of which uses real-world data to help you see trends and make better informed decisions. And don't worry, you don't need to be a world-renowned scientist to understand these courses either. Brilliant's courses are designed for learners of any level. Find out more and to try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/TLDR or click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks for your support and thanks to Brilliant for supporting this video.